To the raucous moment on the House floor yesterday after House Republicans voted down a Democratic effort to increase election security funding. Take a look.
We have sworn an oath to defend our Constitution and our liberty
time has expired.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
The gentleman's time has expired.
You have the opportunity to do that today. Do so. Vote yes on this amendment for your country.
With us now, a member of the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees, Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch of Florida. Congressman, what happened with that vote yesterday, and why did Republicans vote against a bill to fund election security? And would Republicans say, well, we have our own version of that bill that will protect election security just as much as the Democrats?
Well, thanks, Jeff. First of all, no, they're not going to say they have their own bill. There's no good answer for the fact that every Republican in the House of Representatives voted yesterday against additional funding for election security in a vote that took place at the end of a week when the president started the week by showing that he was with Putin instead of with America, and a week after, just a week after the indictment came down that showed the extent of this hacking and what the Russians were trying to do. What the response, the pathetic response, I must say, to this language that would have added funding to go to our states to help prevent cyber attacks from the Russians, the response from a lot of my Republican colleagues was, we shouldn't be doing that. If we want to protect our elections, we ought to pass more voter ID laws. It's tone deaf, it's unpatriotic, it is inexplicable, and I heard you a little earlier, Joe, you're right. Good luck going home and trying to explain to your constituents why the week that we saw the president on stage with Putin, the week we discussed their efforts to attack our democracy and the way they did attack our democracy, we want nothing to do with preventing it from happening again.
We've been talking a lot this morning about what the Democrats' message could and should be this coming fall and in 2020. You know, we've heard polling that a lot of Republicans now seem to favor dealing with Vladimir Putin. They approve of the president's performance this week. Why do you think this is so important? But why do you think, is this an issue you guys can actually run on?
Well, it's sure, we're not going to run on election security and funding for it. But in the big picture, look, what's the message? People want to be, proud Americans want to be proud of their government. They're not proud of this government. And that's not true just for Democrats. It's true for Republicans, too. It's true because of the way the president talks about women, the numbers, the discussion about millennial women. Who's surprised that millennial women don't like a president given the way he talks about women? It's true as they look at the president standing on stage. People want to be proud and know that the president is standing up for our national security, not standing on stage looking like someone who's a pawn for Vladimir Putin. Sure.
I want to ask you something, because I felt, I actually emotionally felt something on the USA. And it was what I was talking about before and what the message needs to be. It's a vote for democracy. It's a vote for freedom. And I want to weave back to what Patrick said. I couldn't agree with him more. It's about the women. And if you do an ad that says to a young millennial woman, this is what your grandmother fought for, fight for your own granddaughter, and what we stand for, and it's up to you to protect us. No, so it's not about voting, but it's that emotion that happened in Congress yesterday. If you can gin that up in the base, and you don't trash Trump, and you don't talk about how he treats women, it's just about who we are. It's the vote of a lifetime. That's what I saw happening with the Congress yesterday.
I know people are cynical about politics, and I understand that a lot of people will watch that and think it's just for show. But there is this sense of patriotism. You saw it. Some of my Republican colleagues realized what was going on and jumped to their feet. It's impossible not to want to stand up right now at this moment for our democracy. I agree with you. Standing for our democracy, making sure that our votes will be protected really matters. But also, Donnie, the same women also care about the fact that this president is tearing kids from their parents at the border. That resonates with them. They care about the fact that the administration is hell-bent on taking away health care coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. All of that matters to them, but it all comes from this deep place of patriotism and frustration at the fact that they're not proud of where we are.
There, you talked about people being cynical. There are people that might look at that video and say, well, this is grandstanding from Democrats who just wanted to make a show because they couldn't actually pass the bill. What is the plan now going forward as President Trump's supporters are following him? They're saying Vladimir Putin should be someone that we're close to. What are Democrats going to do now if you don't have the votes to pass legislation?
Well, first of all, it's really important to point out, I don't know. I think that assertion that Republicans are falling in line behind the president on his relationship with Vladimir Putin, not from what I've seen. And if you look at the tweets,
supporters, I'm talking about.
I'm sorry?
I was talking about Trump supporters.
Oh, sure. And I saw we all saw those polls. A lot of Trump supporters think that the president is right on. I'm not going to try to convince everyone that when the president stands on stage and seems to care more about Vladimir Putin and be there to do his bidding instead of standing up for Americans' national security, I can't convince everyone. I know that the overwhelming majority of people watched the president on stage and were horrified by what they saw. I'm going to continue, we're going to continue to talk to those people and talk about what we need to do to address this issue. We're going to look back on this summer, I'm convinced, we're going to look back on this summer in history and the way the president did the work of Vladimir Putin, not just standing next to him, but he attacked the G7. He went to NATO and attacked NATO. He stood up and attacked our allies specifically. He attacked the EU. That's what Vladimir Putin wants him to do. It's not about having a good relationship with Russia. It's not even just about sanctions. We've imposed sanctions. We dragged the president kicking and screaming to do it, but we've imposed sanctions. But when we impose sanctions and then the president goes into a closed-door meeting with Vladimir Putin, has some conversation that we have no idea, that the director of national intelligence has no idea what it was about, that's something that everyone is nervous about. Everyone understands the threat that it provides.
All right, Congressman Ted Deutsch, thank you so much for being with us. And of course, the congressman would like us to let everybody in his district know, no relation to Donnie. Still ahead on Morning Joe.
Unless they like Donnie, then we're definitely cousins.
Yeah.
A lot of child psychologists have said publicly, they say this amounts to child abuse. Is this child abuse being enforced by the American government?
I think that we have 2,000 children who need our care in terms of being reunited with their parents, and we're working very hard on doing that.
That's the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristen Nielsen, speaking with NBC's Peter Alexander in Aspen. Up next, we're going to be bringing in Jacob Soboroff, whose early reporting on the government's child separation policy pulled back the curtain on the crisis. And you heard the Secretary say there, 2,000 children are still separated from their parents. We'll dig more into that when Morning Joe returns. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.